Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams screens. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Jaylen Brown.
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Celtics Reddit podcast. I'm your host, Celtics J. We've got a Game 4 post-game show for you all this evening. I recorded this with Mr. Chris Forsberg from the media team. He was live in Milwaukee during the Al game, and so he was with us for this episode to share some of those intimate insights and some of his thoughts about looking ahead both in this series and considering Grant Williams' perhaps upcoming big contract. Please join us and enjoy this post-game show, and looking forward to the next chance we get to talk to everyone, hopefully after a big Game 5 win. So without further ado, post-game show with Chris Forsberg. Mr. Forsberg, thank you so much for being here. It must have been a hell of a game to watch in person. We're excited to get your feedback and insight regarding that, but just in general, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm like I said, I maybe for like a fleeting moment started thinking about, because the end is always abrupt. You don't really see the end coming, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, it's here. And it's not a fun spot when you think your team's going to be kind of on the ride for a while. But yeah, I found myself after that sort of lackluster first quarter thinking, how is this team going to kind of rescue itself, and especially in the third. But we're talking about happier topics. So now I'm like, well, what am I going to do if I have to go right from Minnesota to Miami or Philadelphia or wherever else this wild journey might take us? But yeah, it's nice to be still thinking about a potential long run for this team.
And we're joined as well with Mr. Wayne Spooney, who's always frequently joining us. Spoons, talk to the people. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. About Forsberg, you said the end is pretty abrupt. I'm pretty sure my wife gave me that same speech when I was freaking out in the third quarter. But I'm doing fantastic now. That was a hell of a win, and what a fourth quarter, man.
And we also have joining us Joe, our New Zealand correspondent. Joe, it's awesome to have you on with us this evening. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, eh? Like, you can't complain after that.
Challenge
productivity
accepted.
in the work like that. But it was pretty awesome. We'll remember that game for ages. That'll be the Al Horford game, just like the Olympic game, you know?
And so far, this game has been officially dubbed the Al Horford game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go around just the table real quick on this one. Al Horford game, we're good. We're locking that in. Where does this rank as far as, let's look just sort of like post 2008 era, right? Like, where does this rank up there in moments right now? We'll start with you, Forsberg.
So it all depends on what happens from here. If they come back and win this series and then go on and do whatever, then we'll hire in higher esteem than if they lose the next two. And then we're like, they not only did they waste the first good Horford performance, but then they wasted the really good Horford performance. If I have to guess, it's somewhere slightly behind the Kelly Olynyk game, but maybe slightly ahead of, I'm trying to think of other fringe role players that have, and that's not to say that Al is that, but that like other games that have become known by their titles. Like even Shrek and Donkey feels like a bigger moment because of the magnitude than necessarily this. But on the scale of unexpectedness, it's probably even higher than the Olynyk game for me. Like Olynyk always had the potential to go nuts. You didn't think it was going to be Game 7 against the funeral attire Wizards, but watching Al, I was so worried that after how much he expended in Game 3 that there would be no way he could come back and do what he did in Game 4. And he was just legitimately awesome, to the point where I had all these fans around me in Milwaukee asking, where did you get him from again? Like, how did he get back to Boston? And what did you have to give up? And I'm like, you don't understand. We're still on the fence about whether it was a good trade. And they're like, no, you should probably send Oklahoma City another first round pick and say thank you.
I don't think we have any left.
No, that is true.
Yeah.
We can always include a swap.
They might have to get that pick off San Antonio.
Yeah. I got a Reddit comment here for you, Jay, if you want me to get into
throw them at
those.
us.
All right. So
we are the Celtics Reddit podcast.
Exactly. As we say every time we open with the first Reddit comment. This is a friend of the program. User Lar Bird 33 says,
yeah,
the legend.
Yeah, he's back, baby. Horford is 36 years old. Dude was a part of that Atlanta team that took the 08 Celtics to 7 and get round 1. That's old, but I always hoped he'd age like Duncan. Duncan won a title at 37 and was still a major player at 38, so we could theoretically get a couple more years of this. And I've heard like the kind of Duncan of the East, or like Duncan Light or Diet Duncan when he was with Atlanta and now. And it's true, man. That dude's just got a game that he's strong, he's quick enough, he doesn't do anything poorly. And I think that's the type of game that ages really well. And of course, you know, if he's going to shoot 75% from 3, that can help your game age a little bit too.
Yeah, we probably could have got a handful more years out of Duncan if he was doing all that.
Right, yeah.
Joe, thinking back on our first, introduction to Horford when he was giving us nightmares as a member of the Hawks team, like where are you at just in reflecting on Horford's career up until this point and his couple of stints now with Boston?
I think he's he's a real example of players who are classically underrated, man. No weaknesses is so much better than multiple, you know what I mean? No weaknesses is so much better than a big strength in the playoffs.
Right.
And it's a true test, right? I always feel like, and on top of that, coachability can be a strength or a weakness for a player. And I always felt like Duncan was, I think he's criminally underrated. I think he's so much better than Kobe. It's not funny. And Horford's kind of similar. You know, he's average L, but people underrate the value of not having anything to pick on. You know, and I'm just really happy. It must feel like vindication. I'm an Al Horford guy. I'm a Grant Williams guy. I feel like those are the sorts of guys that don't get a love from some of the hoop heads, but I love them anyway.
Chris, jump in from your perspective, because you've been seeing this from a pretty first-handed viewpoint now. I know you shared a little bit just about sort of this moment, but yeah, I mean he gave us night, like he almost beat that 2008 team. Like that 2008 team almost lost in the first. Like I think people forget that. They reflect back on that season and remember the energy of that season, and then just like the elation and the way that we beat the Lakers. I think it kind of gives the impression that like we had an easier go of things than we really did. Like those first 2 series, and especially that one against the Hawks, like I was terrified. I lost weight sweating through those games.
And it's funny when those guys reflect on that, it's like they needed to go through that a little bit because they hadn't been tested during the regular season and they just steamrolled everybody. And I do think there's some, not like I hesitate to compare 08 and 22, but there is some similarities, right? Like the end of the 22 season here, the Celtics were dominating teams, the best team on the road. We didn't know if they could win close games. I didn't know if they could go and win in an environment like Milwaukee, which is pretty rowdy. Like that is an arena that is tough to play in, especially when Giannis gets cooking and like hears it a little bit more as he's attacking relentlessly and elbowing all you guys in the face every time. So here's the thing with the Celtics is I coming into this year, I had no idea if they could. They didn't have a signature playoff win. I didn't know if regular season success could carry over into the playoffs the way it did, and I didn't know if they could win close games. And I guess this doesn't even trigger the criteria because of the way they raced away late. But credit to them. Every time I kind of start to doubt them and think that some of that was a mirage, they have nights like this where you put up 43 fourth quarter points and shoot 84%, 16 and 19 from the field, whatever it was. Like that shouldn't happen in an NBA playoff game against the defending champions and a really good defense. But so the 2022 Celtics never cease to surprise you.
And Spoons, you and I were talking about this, and I remember it's kind of sent you the message. I was saying, there were moments in this game where I know I was having that feeling of, oh, we are seeing some of that early season stuff come out of the squad right now, and then I think at one point someone in our Slack chat had made the remark, they either need to come out scorching in this fourth quarter or this thing is looking pretty much like not a good scenario. And of course, they just went ahead and did exactly that, which is, to your point, Chris, kind of what they've been doing. Spoons, I want to start with you in thinking a little, just kind of generally now. We split the games in Boston. We've now split in Milwaukee. We're going back home for game 5. What do you feel like we've learned from this split here in Milwaukee that we're taking home with us? And what's your outlook moving forward now?
Yeah, so I'm coming away from this just thinking the Celtics are the better team. And Joe and I, we kind of exchanged that same sentiment in our Slack. Because we played pretty poorly offensively in game 3, I thought. Just couldn't make a shot. Although I guess Milwaukee struggled some as well. Tatum had hopefully what will be his worst game of the playoffs. And, you know, we were up 199 with 2 wide open threes that both bricked. And if those go in, I think it's 2-1 going into game 4 Celtics. So it just looks to me like, and at Forsberg, it might even been you who had this stat, but Milwaukee's half-court offensive rating is like struggling to get over 80 in most of these games. And that's what it feels like when you watch them play in the half-court. They just cannot generate good looks at all. And it's just Giannis bully ball is really the only thing they can get to. Whereas it feels like the Celtics are generating all the great looks they could hope for. They're just not been making them before the fourth quarter here. And in game 2, obviously, you see when we're making our shots, it's probably going to be a blowout. And if we're not, we can still grind out a close game. So I said Celtics in 6 from the get-go. You got to lose 2 games to win in 6. I feel like you come back for game 5. You can win that one at home. And then we just showed we could beat them in Milwaukee. And so, yeah, that's what I'm coming away from. I'm similarly confident as I was after game 2. Let's not talk about what, game 3. I was drunk at a wedding, saw the score come through. We don't want to talk about what I was thinking then, but now I'm back to confident.
That's the benefit of having a couple of days between those 2 games before we actually get on and record with you, huh?
Right,
Spoons?
exactly.
Real clever scheduling there on your part, making sure that wedding lined up just right.
Yeah,
Joe,
what
are your thoughts coming away from this split in Milwaukee and heading back to Boston? Are you feeling as confident as you did beforehand? Are you feeling less confident?
No, I'm feeling. I wouldn't be surprised if we run the table. We're better. It'd be interesting, Chris's thoughts as to what it actually feels like. But it just, I'm kind of just restating what Spoon said. But essentially, it feels to me like Milwaukee can't do the things they want to do. They just can't do the things they want to do.
Yeah.
And they just look more uncomfortable to me than the Celtics do. And I thoroughly expect us to win the series now. It's no shame if we don't, I suppose. But I'd be disappointed. It won't be a disappointing season, but it'll be a disappointing. It'll leave a disappointing taste after this. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident. I thought about actually putting money on it, and I am not a gambling man, but yeah, I thought it was almost inevitable that we'd
win today. Real spicy. You're speaking Spoon's language right now. Look at that big smile on that man's face. He's like, let me give you a phone number. I know a guy.
Only gamble response. Hey, it's legal in my state, man.
Chris, I'm interested in what it felt like just watching them in the flesh. Did it feel like the Celtics are does it feel like they are dominant? Because that's what it feels like to me. That's great analysis.
Yeah,
I feel.
I think anytime you have Giannis, you still feel pretty good about your chances because he can just, in a way, single-handedly keep you afloat or give you a chance. And the Celtics have done enough turning the ball over and biting themselves, that I'm not supremely confident. But I do think your point agrees. I think what we knew coming into the series is that without Middleton, the Celtics should be the better team, and yet neither squad has really played to its potential, at least offensively. And I mean, that's part of it is just because they're both so good defensively. But, I'm still wondering what this all looks like when Tatum has a really good game. What happens when Giannis is playing to his potential and his supporting cast is hitting shots? Maybe that will never happen in this series. Maybe it's just, we're just not going to see it. But I do think that's part of the reason it would have been a disappointment if it ended quicker than maybe we had seen coming, because it just felt like the Celtics with home court, with getting Marcus Smart and being relatively healthy at the start of this, that they had a chance here, whereas the Bucks sacrificed home court, didn't have Middleton, and the Celtics having that swagger coming off the Brooklyn series. So still a lot of work to be done, still a lot of series to go. I think it's going to be if you think that these past 4 games have been a little bit nerve wracking, then buckle up. I feel like it's going to take some years off live moving forward here to if nothing more than watching every Celtic player get spend time writhing on the pain in the ground.
Unconscious.
It's like the scene in Wedding Crashers where they're playing football and he's like every time it's like, look over, you're on the ground, and that's the way it feels with these guys right now.
And shoulder drives. That's what Giannis does. Quick question, because I'm watching a highlight of the Marcus Smart entanglement with Giannis.
Where they tried to help each other up, and
where Marcus tried to help Giannis up from what I'm seeing, and Giannis proceeded to keep his leg conveniently wrapped around Marcus, and then pretend to reach out and grab his hand to come out, but then just pull him to keep him from running. And then when he reaches back to help him one more time, he there's the referee standing right there watching, and at one point Giannis's foot kicks Marcus. Now it's not an aggressive kick. It's not we're not watching a Van Damme movie by any stretch. I'm not trying to be crazy off the hinges like that, but it's still enough where a player is clearly physically stopping another player from competing, and then goes to the extent where it actually hits them. How is a ref not making any call there? What is happening here?
I mean, you've seen the series, right? There's steel chairs and ladders and
what is going
cages.
on?
That was the least egregious thing I saw tonight. As these guys are wrestling all over each other. I keep waiting for the moment that Smart and Grayson Allen have a loser leaves town match or something to.
That'll be quick.
It should be, but it's been fun to. I like it. I don't mind that it's a little bit kind of grimy and the offense is kind of grind to a halt a little bit. It's I know it's not the most aesthetically pleasing basketball at times, but if you just like 2 really good defensive teams doing what they do and forcing you to be creative with how you're trying to get your offensive points. I mean, if the Celtics had walked the ball up the court all night tonight, I would have probably ran out there myself and screamed. But they seem to have to figure it out. There are ways to generate more consistent offense, and I don't expect 43-point quarters all the time, but they certainly have to be far crisper and value the ball and really attack with a purpose the way they do, which seemingly it always just seems to take them a little while to figure it out. And then usually Jalen, it's like, oh well, yeah, let's keep doing that. This is
how I do this. Oh yeah. Let me get back at it. One of the things I liked at the end of this game was at a certain point, and it seemed to maybe come after Al Horford had his monster jam and then the people's elbow on Giannis there, which I'm sure was a total accident.
Total.
But Marcus started playing a little bit of his own bully ball, which I thought was pretty interesting. And seeing him take, a couple of different guys down into the post himself and get some buckets there kind of brought up some images of some vintage, like Jason Kidd when he would do some stuff like that, or Chauncey Billups when he would do some stuff like that. Peyton would do some stuff like that. I'm interested in getting everyone's thoughts. We'll start with you, Chris, just in your thoughts on, is that something we should expect seeing in the upcoming games? Is that maybe a wrinkle that just kind of got found out that we haven't been able to take advantage of yet?
If it works, ride it. What I liked is that I feel like throughout the series, that's what Drew has done to the Celtics and Marcus. It feels like in a lot of the games they've lost, and it's weird. I keep saying all these games, like in the 3 previous games,
right?
They feel so long.
Every time the Celtics would get within 2 or 4 or make a run, and you felt like that maybe the momentum was starting to change, Drew just seems to hit the shot that you're like, oh, come on, isn't that supposed to be Giannis? Isn't that supposed to be you leave a 3-point shooter open? That part of the reason I really like Drew is he's not afraid of it. I mean, the other night, 30 shots, he's just going to take what you give him, and he's going to be okay with bullying you at times. And so I think Smart flipped the script a little bit tonight and said, all right, you've been trying to show me up as defensive player of the year. Let's see how this looks going the other way, and so much better than a lot of the shot profile they had in the first quarter.
Joe, what are your thoughts on that? Or is there anything else that stands out to you as far as like some areas that the Celtics can try to take advantage of and maybe have a deciding victory in Game 5?
Just defensively, I just noticed when Giannis will take contact, he'll have the initial drive, sort of stymied, and then he'll turn and he'll do like it's a really effective move, right? If you fade and fake the shot and then do the up and under. I just wonder if the Celtics have just got to stop pushing up to try and contest his fadeaway there. I'm fine with Giannis taking a fadeaway. I don't think he's going to make that many of them. There was quite a few instances where he takes advantage of our respect for his turnaround jumper. We push up too hard, then we're off balance. He gives us the fake. He goes the up and under. I just like to maybe it only happened twice tonight, but it feels like something that I've seen a couple of times. So that's one adjustment I'd like to see us make is we're doing great at really walling off that initial drive. We're doing as good as you can, and we're going to get beat sometimes. Mm-hmm. But when we do it, don't press. You can let him take that shot. He's not going to make that many of them. That's probably the main thing I would have liked to adjust, and it's a very minute sort of tactical thing, eh? But in general, I just feel like we're a bigger, stronger team, and we're physically dominant over them. That I really feel like we are, despite Giannis being singularly physically dominant. I don't know. I always wonder I keep wondering, does it feel like that? Like I might be off base here, Chris. Like, what does it feel like to you, just in terms of the relative sort of, I guess, physical ascendancy that either team has? Is it a wash, or does it really feel like one team's dishing it out a bit more?
I mean, Giannis is bigger and longer armed, and it feels like he's more likely to catch you with something. And Bobby Portis, and again, I feel like every time I look up, Time Lord's on the ground holding his head because Portis got him with an elbow, or then someone gets a forearm. But to me, that's always because when you play hard and you're attacking with a purpose, those things happen. And like I don't know if we're going to go down the ref alley. I kind of despise the referee talk, and I think it's just play better, and you don't talk about referees.
Throw out my run sheet.
So, but what I would say there is that you have to force the issue. And the only way you're getting calls is if you're consistently aggressive and trying to get to the basket. And so I think the Celtics have done a better job of that, especially in Game 4. What's fun is the media section in Milwaukee is a little setback. It's like in the corner and sort of up above the first. What would in the Garden would be like above the first Loge level. So it's a little bit further back than what we get in Boston. And even through the early part of the series, you see guys like hitting each other and stuff like that. It's hard to get a gauge sometimes about like just how physical it is. But my buddy was up here, and he gets some tickets. He used to be a season ticket guy. He still has his seats at the Garden, and he knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who got us a couple seats 10 rows off the floor for these two games. And so I snuck down with him for a little bit tonight, and it's just wild how it's literally like I went back to my childhood and attended a WWE event, and when these guys are going at each other around the basket, it's rough going in there, and I don't envy anybody. I don't envy when Marcus or Grant or whoever decides I'm just going to step in front of Giannis in transition trying to draw a charge. It looks like the most painful experience ever.
Yeah.
Like imagine just telling your buddy go roll a Volkswagen into me while I'm standing here, and so let's see what happens. But it's good because there was none of that. Brooklyn did not ooze any sort of physicality, and I think from here on out the Celtics have to be ready for that. Whether it's the Bucks, whether it's whatever comes next, and like everybody that's left is going to play a certain brand of bully and grit. So they need to continue to embrace the way that this series has played out.
Are there any other teams that are going to play this kind of, like the way the Bucks and Celtics are playing right now? Is there another like one or Miami even two teams?
Miami will. Philly's got Embiid, so he's going to hit you if you go to the basket. Fair. Phoenix is going to mug you at every turn. And I don't know. Even Memphis. Like I know we all focus on
Memphis.
John,
I'd worry about because Memphis is that scrappy bunch, man.
3-1.
Ooh.
Is it 3? Oh,
Yeah.
it just did
They're
that
done.
just wrap up?
It's over.
All right.
It's over.
Memphis. Listen, their time will come.
Forsberg, next time you sneak down in the next Milwaukee game, you got to roll out there with a steel chair like the wrestling
Yes.
manager, toss it to Marcus Smart, let him go wild. But one thing I noticed, and I wonder, I imagine it coincided with, or at least partially with our awesome fourth quarter, was I got a Reddit comment here for you, Jay. User Millie Mills 420, which is probably just 6 random numbers he picked out of a hat. I'm glad Ime put Grant in his place a little in the second half, doing a little too much complaining to the refs for a glorified role player. And I think it was partially due to foul trouble, but we ended up going small in that fourth quarter for a lot of it. And that clearly, at least for one game, juiced the offense with Derek White out there doing his ball movement and smart passing. Hell, even hit a corner 3 for good measure. So I wonder if that's something he looks to do in game 5 a little bit more, is size down, put Tatum at the 4, because to your point, Jay, about Smart, he had so much room when he was doing his little half post up Drew Holiday type of drives that just has not been out there for a lot of this series. It was almost like, oh, I forget that you're allowed to like drive without Brooke Lopez draped all over you sometimes. So I'd be interested to see how much we roll that out going forward.
Yeah, so Derek White did have himself a nice game, because he's been getting a lot of heat so far, like throughout the entirety of the playoffs, really, because he didn't really show super well in the like, he didn't do anything terribly wrong or like, you know, have us suffering for any reason, but a lot of folks have been noticing his seeming absence. So tonight was kind of a nice opportunity for him to show out a little bit on both sides of the ball, because I think he's been consistent on the defensive end. I don't think anyone's really criticized that, or even his ball movement, but just seeing him be able to get a couple of buckets and keep the other defense honest, I think has been a big deal. What seemed to be that temperament from your perspective, Chris?
Probably game 2 was it game 2 was the best example, because he was plus 22 that night, right? Like he has over 6. He stepped out of bounds a couple times, like about as maddening as a night as you can have, but he still impacted the game positively. And it was just a reminder, like he does stuff that doesn't necessarily leap off the page. I did think like all those bench guys got to be a little bit better to win this series, because you just need more, and you can't rely on Al for 30 points a night. And so you need Grant to not go back to knocking down shots and not bitching, and you need Peyton Pritchard to kind of remember he's Peyton Pritchard and do what he did in the first round. So, I mean, again, these are nitpicks, because in this time of year, it probably falls more on your superstars, and the Celtics, with the exception of Tatum's clunker the other night, have been very good, and at least in terms of bouncing back. And I thought he had his moments as well. So, like I don't worry about the Derek White part of it. There's a lot more things that should be keeping fans up than Derek White struggling with his shot when you're finding positive ways to impact everything out there.
Well, I think for a lot of fans too, like guys like Derek White will catch a lot of flack, if only for the convenience of not having to then like ridicule folks' favorite player, right? Like I'm going to be far more comfortable criticizing Derek White than I'm ever going to be criticizing Marcus Smart, especially because essentially Derek White is now fitting into that former role filled by Marcus Smart, where he's got the plus contribution, but like not the stat line to sort of back it up. How often did we talk about Marcus Smart with those same kinds of stat lines and talk about the way he impacts winning? What about the Grant Williams dynamic though? Because we saw him kind of have a couple of games where he seemed like superhuman. People are talking about him like, you know, he's a shoo-in for being a starter in the future. He's maybe the best defensive player on the team. That's like national guys talking about stuff they don't actually know anything about. And so we're not going to put too much weight into all that. We did see a little bit of a different dynamic. We saw him kind of get yanked back to the bench. We didn't see a lot of him in that fourth quarter. What should we read into that?
I hope that's just a reminder, Ime's firm little disclaimer there, that if you let him do the complaining, and if you don't, he's probably got to really in a little bit. And look, the most glaring moments from Game 3 was those 2 transition plays where Tatum doesn't get back, and then Grant doesn't get back first, and then Tatum later. To me, those things are inexcusable, especially when you're grinding on offense as much as you are, and you can't just be giving away points. And so I thought at the start of the game, I thought it was interesting because there was always these like little frustrating moments. And the first time it happened, Grant just turned and walked back, but yeah, there lost his way a little bit there, and he's just got to remember, for all the good that has occurred, he is still a role player for this team right now, and you know you got to earn that right to be a little uppity. And as Spoon said, like the small ball lineups have been pretty effective in this series, and so I mean, it was weird. Ime was rolling out like triple big lineups at some points to just kind of match Milwaukee size. I'd rather you kind of just find. I mean, they need more skill on the court in order to keep teams honest and to loosen things up a little bit. So I do hope they try to ride some of those smaller groups when they're having success.
Just on Grant Williams, I don't know, guys. Like, it does seem to me that he. I want to test out an observation, so see if this is true. It seems to me when he has to bring the ball down to his waist to shoot, it seems to me like he really struggles like that. I feel like it's really noticeable difference between him catching it in the pocket like that, and the dip's kind of a bit more trendy now, but it seems like when he catches it here versus when he catches it down here, it feels like he's a flamethrower like that, and feels like he can't do it when he has to bring it down. It looks quite laboured when he has to bring the ball down. So that's something I tend to watch with Grant. Like, I think he's got to be really judicious about taking what shots he takes, and I'd like to see him drive the closeouts a little more than go to the side step three. I don't know what's the sort of reaction he gets on the bench. When he takes a side step three, is his teammates sort of back him? Do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Joe. I'm not sure. I mean, Grant has hit him a few times, but man, just get to the rim and try and make a play, because he's a pretty solid passer too. So he can make a play. He actually was finished really well inside of 5 feet this year too. So I'll be on the lookout for that, Joe. It's not something I've noticed, but it would make sense in why he's a much worse pull-up shooter than he is a catch-and-shoot guy, and that would be, that's the same type of motion when you're shooting off the dribble. He has kind of fallen in love with that sidestep three. I don't know if he's playing with Tatum with him too much.
It's the pregame one-on-one where Tatum does that same move every time.
Yeah, Grant's like, I'm top 6.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I don't know. I would just, especially against this Milwaukee team, like that's what they want you to do, is take that shot, like get into the rim, move the ball, get the churn going.
On that point, it feels like we've gotten some really good late clock looks when we do just persist with drive kick, that one more drive kick. It feels like we've, it might be really late, but we've actually gotten a good look, and we've really, when you earn the look, it tends to go in. That's my theory anyway. Sorry to jump for you there, Jay, but like that's a point in favor of Grant, to encourage Grant to keep driving. I'd like to see him drive and keep the position alive a little bit longer.
I think we're seeing some special stuff out of Grant that is more than, I've always been a fan of Grant Williams, and I've been really excited for what he can bring, but I don't know that I ever thought he could bring as much as he currently is, especially as a shooter. And it's got me kind of thinking about the role that he can play moving forward if he can grow into it at the right pace, and I think today maybe we saw a little bit of him trying to get a little ahead of where he's at, especially with regards to the relationship with the refs, perhaps. Like, he's not in that space where the refs are even going to really listen to what he's got to say about too much right now. So like, that's not a muscle that he has to really flex. The muscle he has to flex right now is the one that he needs when Giannis comes barreling down into the paint. And he's shown to be remarkable in that spot. I want to throw it around and just get folks, sort of either final takeaways or any notes from the game that, feel like it's worth kind of getting out there into the space.
I love that that Anna Horford had the moment that Al was so mad, like immediately. And it's those things you can't see. It's, at least from my perspective, you can't always see them in real time. And then you see the video and you're like, oh yeah, oh, that's going to be a problem. And I think there's just this great visual to see. Like, we all think that Al sort of came back, but there's that Ninja Turtle meme, right, where he's the old guy with the young turtles, and now they're grown, and I think it's perfect for what's going on. But now here he is, still showing he can be the sage veteran and kind of guiding guys when they need a little bit. And I wonder how this would all look if they didn't have him. Like, beyond just his high level of play, do they need someone who is that sort of quiet veteran who just kind of implores you to go find a way to win and do all that stuff? I think it's a really cool story that's going on with Al. I mean, getting walk-off interviews in this moment, and then did they get him in the locker room? I thought I saw something about.
No, they're in the weight room.
Celebrating.
They caught him in the weight room.
I just think it's cool that
him, JT,
well,
Tice, they were all in the weight room getting some in.
Lifts after dubs, like whatever works for you. Sometimes I think they should lift after losses and a little bit of punishment, but I'm not the one to ask about when you're supposed to lift and all that. So I'll leave that to
whenever he's lifting, he needs to keep doing that because it's working.
Yeah. Get the ice tub, whatever magic the Celtics are working. Because I don't understand how 3 years ago we couldn't figure out how to keep Al on the court, and his knees were blowing up and ready to fall apart. And now, 3 years later, all of a sudden, he's just found this ability to be one of the best players on the court in a series featuring a whole bunch of all-stars. So credit to Al Horford. He's an inspiration to all of us to be great as we age.
Listen, and there's not a moment that I've witnessed in my life, like firsthand, watching games on TV, not in person, reckon, but watching that scene where Giannis just yammed it right in Al's face and then starts giving him all the business. And in that moment, I'm frustrated because I'm like, man, it sucks, but you can't necessarily be mad at Giannis because he's doing what he's supposed to do, right? But then to see Horford's whole demeanor, looking at him you could just tell in his head something had gone just a step too far, and he just, okay. And I grew up around people who, when they nod at you like that, it's bad news bears. You find a way to make amends, mea culpas, whatever it's got to be. You get good, otherwise it's going to be a problem. And then it was a quarter later, Al Horford turns into rookie Al again, smashes that thing he was about to get in his own dunk contest, and then for good measure, right, just drops him. He said okay. he said okay. That was definitely that's a moment I'll never let go of. Al Horford doing that nod and going okay. That was the most comforting thing in the world. It really was.
That's gonna be a gift for a long time.
It needs to be.
It. Yeah.
And it needs to take the place of that silly meme where they mischaracterize our players with the wrong turtles, and it bothers me.
God.
I can't deal with this
again.
No, I'm over it.
I got a perfect Reddit comment for this. Because I'm not capable of making my own thoughts, all right?
You're just making sure that I don't get us into a situation where we're not valid on the sub anymore. You're keeping me honest. I appreciate you, Spoons.
Yeah, I got you. User Mucker J. Part of me thinks that the C's got it together because they knew if they didn't, Big Al would have hit them with the old, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in the locker room post game. And I just feel that goes to Tatum had that awesome quote that was just I'm lucky to have Al Horford as a teammate. And Tatum's, I think, not exactly effusive with his praise. He'll be I was a big fan of Rob, but it's always kind of tongue in cheeky a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it just seemed like he was no, that man has helped turn me into who I am today. He is a father figure. He is Master Splinter. I mean, it's just I'm the good vibes are really high after this one with the Al game, man. I'm just very happy for him, and I'm happy he's back.
Look, enjoy the game for what it is. It's just a really cool game. Like you were talking about, where you ranked it all time. And you're right, Chris, that, history will remember a lot. It will be a much remembered game because if we win the series, because it would have been the pivotal game. But as a fan, I think we just got to learn to just enjoy these moments for what they are. And for me, as a fan, it's just as good as it's, better than the Olynyk game, because this Milwaukee series feels for me more intense, but that's probably recency bias. So yeah, just like enjoy this for what it is. I expect us to run the table, but if we don't, we'll always have this game. Like, just enjoy the waves of euphoria, guys. Just enjoy it. Light up that cigar if you've got one.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna wrap it up there. Chris, I want to thank you again for taking some time and meeting with us and chatting us up today. I know it's been a long weekend, let alone a long evening, but I'm glad we got to close things out with a big win. Looking forward to Game 5.
But before we get out of here, what are we paying Grant now? Like, remember my last visit, I think we were. I mean, I was criminally low, and now, like, what are we? I was up here and I was talking to a buddy, and I think it wasn't preposterous to say like $16-18 million based on what he's doing, and I think we did agree that whatever the number is, people are going to be like, and it's going to hurt, especially in relation to like how Rob's deal looks. But what number should not be sticker shock to Celtics fans?
460, which is a shitload. I think that's 20 million more than I thought last time you were on, but 15 a year for a dude who can defend bigs and can switch and is a 40% 3-point shooter with a little bit more to his offensive game. I mean, that sounds like 15 million a year to me, unfortunately.
And that's why I'm worried it's going to go even higher. Like, I think you can push to 16 or 18 depending on market conditions. I don't know. Maybe that's what Ime's thinking about. Maybe Ime's like, I need to put him on the bench for a little bit. Like, they hit Rob for 3 years so that they could pay him $11 million.
Joe, what are your thoughts on the Grant salary coming out of this playoffs?
Well, before you asked it, I was thinking 15 to 18 per year. So what's that? And maybe 470. Probably, I think if it was, I think 20 would be sticker shock. But he's still going to be tradable if he's even if it's at $16-17 million a year. He's actually, we kind of have needed more of those pieces, if there is a max player to come along. We kind of need somebody. We continue to need people in that slot. And I think he offers
is he not the max player?
Derek White at this point.
What if Grant was making more than Smart?
You mean all-star Marcus Smart? He never.
If we had gotten the chance to pod the other night, I had my Marcus Smart all-star jersey I was ready to show off.
Yeah.
Listen, I think part of it also comes down to whether the intentions are for him to sort of replace Al, right? Like, if the plan is for him to sort of grow into replacing Al in that starter role and play alongside Rob Will, then I think, you look at some bigger money than you might otherwise, because you're trying to lock him up and you see him as a big piece of that future moving forward. That would be a huge vote of confidence in him, right? Like, that would be, but he's demonstrated, I think, he's demonstrated good on his end to this point. He's done everything that's been asked of him. He's changed his game when that's been asked. He's performing in the biggest moments. And all he's ever seemed to sort of lack is opportunity in a sufficient role. So, I mean, but someone always comes around and overpays someone over some dumb stuff, right? And like, he could absolutely be one of those cats, depending on how the market shakes out and what teams end up with who. Like, Grant is one of those guys I could see, like, a team that just needs to put someone solid in there and, like, I don't know, like, round things out for them, could just end up throwing like a silly bag at him, because there's a bunch of money that's going to be going around. They're already talking about raising the cap again. We're going to have to do a couple more episodes on that spoon. So, no pressure.
The thing about wanting him to replace Al Horford is he's going to have to wait like 5 to 10 more years before Al is.
That's right.
Duncan. He's going full TB12 here. And
that's the thing. See, maybe that was it. When he was here last time, Brady was still in town, and you can't have that much like non-aging
that much
human genetic
balls,
energy in one space. So we had to get rid of Tom Brady in order for Al to reach his full potential.
Well,
I like the theory.
Worth it.
We're solving all the mysteries. All right. Again, Chris, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much. Spoons, Joe, you're living legends. Thank you both so much. And on behalf of everyone here at the Celtics Reddit Pod, I want to say go C's. And until next time, peace.
Season 6.